Coming up on episode 98 of the Behind the Back podcast, we got training camp news, guys. We got Niners training camp news. We got Eagles training camp news. And Ben and I try a fun little exercise this week where we went on to DraftKings and we went on some player overs and unders that we thought we would hit on this season, as well as some win totals that we wanted to reveal. So with that being said, y'all, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet. Reds, Ben, how are you, brother? How you feeling?
Dude, football is back, baby.
Yes, sir. We're a week into training camp, and just like you guys heard in the intro, it's a action-packed NFL-only pod. So we're excited. We're a week into training camp. It feels like the dog days of summer. Like we're in it. NFL is back. We're feeling good. So we're going to start in San Francisco. We're going to start with the Niners. There's a lot of news going on in San Francisco. So let's break it down. What has really stood out, or who? What storylines are dominating the camp right now in San Francisco?
Honestly, the ones that are taking over more than anything is actually the impact of the rookies. There's been a lot of positives throughout training camp for the Niners in general, and I'm going to touch up on all those and kind of briefly highlight those. But overall, dude, I want to real quickly say what a 180 this has been from what last year's training camp was. And the players that talked about that, the coaching staff have mentioned it, like, and you can kind of see it and feel it just in the energy of how these training camp practices are going. So it's thrilling to be able to say that, you know, training camp is actually a positive thing this year versus last year in that cloud. So let's start with our quarterback. Brock has looked consistent and smooth all training camp. He's had a few big plays and he's limited his mistakes for the most part. He had a bit of a rough day yesterday, Wednesday. He went like 6 of, I think, 12 in through the air passes, but he also got kind of rolled up on and his ankle got a little tweaked. And after that, he was about 3 of 6 through the air. So he's okay. Everything I've heard is he's okay. He went over and he kind of tested it out. So gotta be a little careful with our guy there. Take care of your quarterback, especially the guy you just paid a whole lot of money to. But he's been smart with the football for the most part, and he's shown his leadership throughout camp, which is something that, you know, I really can't highlight enough and something that we talk about constantly. But let's talk about these rookies, man. Alfred Collins is moving people with ease. CJ West being an absolute force in one-on-one drills early in camp. Jordan Watkins is looking more like a serviceable wide receiver after carrying his strong performances from OTAs into training camp. Jordan James out of nowhere, 5th round running back. He's made some noise as well. So undrafted rookie Jacob Robinson, he's made some awesome plays at cornerback. Keep an eye on him to potentially be part of that 53-man roster as that secondary room kind of shakes out. Rookie Upton Stout has been impressive. His argument, he's really establishing himself in an argument for that starting nickel slot. Michael Williams, this is the one I really wanted to talk about. He's learning very quickly at the hands of Nick Bosa and the mastermind of Rob Saleh. Michael has been running with the first team consistently, and with his athleticism, he's just been an absolute handful for the O-line. And in fact, he's actually gotten in the head of Trent Williams, not with anything, not anything other than his play. And that to me is something fun that I kind of enjoy. And Trent really gave him some credit as well. And Nick's gotten to Trent a lot more than Michael has. But that's, Nick Bosa, of course. But, a great example was him just blowing by Trent at one point in practice. And he also ended up moving Dominic Puni with relative ease. And Dominic Puni is a top 10 guard in the NFL, I would argue. So all these things that I'm seeing from Michael, man, they're really promising. I love to see it. He did kind of tweak his ankle early on in the week. It's not expected to be anything serious. It did keep him out of, I believe, 2 practices, Tuesday and Wednesday. So keep an eye on that. But he should be good to go start, preseason here. So I'm thrilled with what I've seen from my rookies, bro. And that has been like the biggest highlight for me. Now, I know you're an Eagles fan, and we got Eagles fans up in this room as well. I just got to say thank you so much for the gift, Philly, because I got to say, man, Bryce Huff has been impressive throughout training camp for us. And, y'all just didn't know how to use him, or you were using the wrong scheme. I don't know. It don't matter. I will take him, man. Bryce Huff has been awesome. He's been a presence on the field, and he's somebody that I think is absolutely going to find a good amount of reps and positive reps here in San Francisco. So I just wanted to give my thanks to those Philly fans. But Marcos, that's been kind of the highlights. I got a couple more here, but I mean, what are you seeing? Do you like what you're hearing over here? Obviously, last year we are talking about all these, doom and gloom clouds. This is a big turnaround, right?
Oh, absolutely. And again, the vibes are immaculate. He glossed over a Purdy story. He became a dad over the weekend too. So his daddy superpowers were activated as well, and they took that into practice as well. It's good to see, things in Niners camp, especially with the rookies, right? I like, your first round pick, your second round pick,
Yeah.
and your fourth round pick all hitting right now, at least seemingly, and doing well. I heard things about Nick Martin too. I'm really, that's what you need to hear. And it's good
Yeah.
having Saleh back. And I think that's what a lot of the guys, I heard Lenore talking about it. And, just having Saleh back in the room, it's a different type of environment. Having a former head coach running the defense again, all the experience he gets to bring is
It's
so
massive.
invaluable. And
Yeah.
if your defensive line is replenished with a lot of young bodies and Bryce Huff, of course, I think, the whole Bryce Huff experience, I'll allude to a kind of an example of kind of where that went wrong with another Eagles guy later on. But it is it's good for Bryce. I'm happy for Bryce that he found a spot there in San Francisco in the system that was meant for him. I think Philly tried to turn him into something that he wasn't. And so
Yeah.
it never really worked out that way. But in terms of camp, obviously we'll talk about injuries here and there, but it's good to see some of these guys step up and be able to make big plays. And these are the reps. These are the valuable reps that these young guys need. And you're gonna need some of these guys to step up early in the season. So it's always good to see.
Yeah, exactly. So, when we talked about those position battles last week, two of those was, the kicker battle, and on top of that was the weak side linebacker position. And those were two battles I was going to watch pretty closely. And a little update on those: D Winters has been that guy pretty consistently throughout training camp, making plays in the run game as well as the pass game. In my opinion, he's essentially locked himself into that starting off-ball weak side linebacker position. I would be surprised if anybody overtakes him. I really like what I'm seeing from Nick Martin, but he's got more to develop. He's got more to grow. And I think with a guy like D, who's been a part of the system now for, going on his second year, he's really taken into to this system and really developed himself into the player that, the Niners kind of need right now. And this is something like, he got his opportunities last season, and he made as much as he could out of those. So far in training camp, he's been even better than, we could have really imagined him to be. So I love what I'm seeing from D. Like I said, I think he pretty much has that lockdown, that starting role locked down. As for that kicker battle,
Yeah.
it's tight. It's tight right now. Neither Jake nor Greg have given any reason to believe that, one was better or worse than the other. So I fully expect this battle to be decided in preseason, with timely field goals and extra points, opportunities, so on and so forth. So keep your eye on this preseason, because, obviously we probably won't end up punching, everything into the end zone. You're going to have to rely on some field goals from time to time. I think we'll get a good mix of both of those guys. I think we'll probably end up seeing a little more of Jake Moody, at least initially. And, if Jake misses one, immediately I would expect to see Greg. And if Greg rebuttals and knocks one down, it could be an edge as close as that. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. But last but not least, Christian McCaffrey has made some stellar plays when his name was called. He hasn't taken a ton of snaps, but he's been a consistent presence throughout camp. He looks healthy. He looks poised. He looks ready for a massive season. So I'm excited about that. The unfortunate part of all this, I named a whole bunch of positives. My keys for training camp, or my key to training camp, was the injuries. Well, the Niners are dealing with them, bro. Jawan Jennings has got a calf injury. Obviously, Michael Williams, like I said, he's got that ankle injury. Renato Green, who's had a really good training camp and OTAs, he's got a hamstring injury. Jacob Cowing, an ankle. Taron Jackson, which I got to kind of actually, I can't glance over that. Taron Jackson, he was also an Eagle at one point, now a Niner. He had a kind of a scary moment on, I believe it was Sunday or Monday, when he went down and he had a neck injury. He was down for about 6 minutes before he was stretchered off in an ambulance and taken to the hospital. He was released, but it was a little bit unknown as to what the injury was, and it was clearly very serious. A lot of the players kind of touched up on it, and you know, some of these former players and even players in the moment, they always talk about what it's like when a guy goes down with a serious injury like that. It dampens the day, you know, not in a way that, you know, is negative in any way like towards that person, but it's like you start thinking, you're like, man, this kind of stuff can happen. This is a very real thing. So prayers to Teron Jackson. I hope he, you know, I hope he heals up quick. I hope it's nothing that's too severe for his career. So kind of keep an eye on that. But other than that, you know, Domador Lenore and Jordan James, they did miss Tuesday's practice for undisclosed reasons. It's not really clear if they were injured or if it was for a different reason. But yeah, man, that's, you know, the injuries are piling up in other ways and not in positions that you want them to.
Right. And that was something, especially with some of these young guys, you know, you'd hope to avoid, especially like Renardo Green. Like, I was disappointed to see that he went down.
Yeah.
I was really excited for him because, you know, he handles one side of the field, and, you know, him, Lenore, and then you have some of these young guys you can throw dart throws at. So that was a bummer to see. And,
It was.
you know, I saw Ricky Pearsall, you know, was activated off the PUP list, and originally I thought he was going to be out for longer. So that's good. That was good to see. But yeah, Jawan Jennings, rough timing for the contract of it all for him too. It just doesn't, it never works out that way, right? So
Yep.
it's you know, hopefully, these guys that are hurt can come back, you know, before training camp ends, before preseason ends, and still get some reps before week 1 starts. But outside of that, you know, the guys who have been making noise, it's been good, and hopefully they, you know, stay consistent. I know the Michael ankle was the same ankle that, you know, was bothering him all year last year that he played through. Still really hasn't gotten a chance to, you know, truly rehab, or so I do think that's something that, you know, I would monitor consistently throughout year. And that might be something that the team needs to pay attention to, and hopefully it doesn't, you know, linger too much for him. But you know, all signs are pointing that everything's going well with these rooks. So you know, good news in Niners camp from, you know, for the most part. And yeah, I saw that CMC highlight where he blew by that linebacker and caught that ball. That was really sick. That was a cool play. And that Upton Stout pass breakup was pretty sick too. The way he just lunged out full. I was like, all right, this guy's got some game. So these guys are making some fun plays out there. It's been a highlight city over there in SF.
Yeah, and when, you know, there's so many jobs, you know, not necessarily on the line, there are some of those, but jobs that are up for grabs, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to see the best out of a lot of these guys. And I feel like we've really gotten a great sample size of that from these players throughout training camp. Like, there's a hunger out there, not just for your job, but there was a hunger to go out there in the regular season as well and make some noise. Like, the Niners know this is a great opportunity to really bounce back after what was a really abysmal season last year. And this is a great opportunity for a lot of these young guys to establish themselves early in their career on what could be a dominant team. So these guys understand the stakes. They've been playing like it. It's exciting to see the Niners, you know, so far it looks like they've absolutely smashed this draft. When initially we went on the pod and we heard all these people talking about how you didn't necessarily need to take this player here or there. And I came out and said, you know, you take your guy where you feel you can get your guy. And I feel like the Niners have hit on all those guys that they, you know, maybe took a chance on and could have taken later. All these guys have panned out, and it makes it that much more worth it to take it where they took them.
Absolutely. Is there I know there's a lot of young guys, you know, you're excited about, but is there a name that you're confident in, that you're like, oh, this guy's going to be, you know, a starter or focal point for this team right out of the gate week 1? Anyone that you want to like put your stamp on and say, this guy's going to be something?
I gotta say, bro, there is just an absolute presence when I look at CJ West out there. There's something about the way that he just takes up a large amount of space and moves people around that I think Rob Saleh and this defense is going to absolutely fall in love with. So I would keep an eye on that. Obviously, I want to see Michael Williams. That's my guy. I had him touted from the start, right? But yeah, man, everything I've seen from CJ West, it's explosive, it's exciting. He's huge. He moves people without even trying. Like, that's something I think from an immediate present standpoint that you can really rely on, and that's somebody to really keep an eye on.
Heck yeah, I'm excited. So that's big news. What's something you're really looking for? What you're looking for here now that week one's gone by? These next couple weeks, what are you really paying attention to?
I want to see how the rest of these, battles shake down, and I want to see, I want to see our team stay healthy. I'm not even going to stress it enough. I hate that that's kind of a cop out thing to say at this point, but we talked about it last week, and we've talked about it how many seasons in a row the Niners have battled with these injuries. At this point, bro, I want to go into the season as prepared as possible, and not just from a schematic standpoint, not just from anything like that. I want to go into it from an availability standpoint. I want to know that we have depth at all these positions. And that's something right now that I'm concerned about. But if I had to pinpoint something, I've seen some really fun things out of the wide receiver room, young guys to keep an eye on, right? And I'll highlight those as training camp goes on, and especially preseason, because obviously the wide receiver room right now is lacking depth with Juwan Jennings and obviously Brandon Ayuk being out. Questions about Ricky Pearsall and his future availabilities, right, based on his past. So it draws these questions as to how deep your wide receiver room truly is. That's something I'm watching the rest of training camp right now, and as preseason goes on. I want to see which of these wide receivers are really stepping up into their roles and saying, I can absolutely solidify myself as a part of this 53-man roster and solidify myself as somebody that the Niners can rely on when the depth becomes an issue.
I love that. That's great. So, any final thoughts on the Niners before we push on here to Philly?
No, sir. I'm ready.
All right. So, we're on to Philadelphia, and it's been kind of a scorcher here in training camp. So, just in case we're recording on July 30th, it is Wednesday. And they have, most of these teams have gone through 5 or 6 practices now. Philadelphia practiced today or yesterday. They practiced on Tuesday. They had today off. And a lot of good things coming out of camp. It started, the first few days were really, the offense was really shining. The ball was hardly touching the ground. Jalen was making good strides. Jihaad Campbell was in camp. He looks healthy. He was getting reps. On Saturday, Jihaad Campbell ended up taking first team reps with Zach Bond taking the day off, which was huge. And they just had pads these past couple of days, Monday and Tuesday, and Jihaad Campbell was there in the pads running everything. They had him listed as limited, but according to all the beat writers watching him, there was nothing limited about what he was doing. He was tackling. He had one little scary moment today. I think he was going after I forget which running back. It was one of the backup running backs that we have, and he slammed him full tackle, running at him full speed, and he stayed on the ground for a second, kind of almost like to catch his breath. People were worried about, was it his shoulder? And then he jogged over to the next field and immediately made a play on Dallas Goedert, and everyone's like, oh, he's fine. Okay, cool. So he's doing really well. He had a couple great plays on Goedert and Barkley on Monday, and everyone was really praising how fast he's picking things up and kind of how smooth and athletic he looks. And everyone's now really buying into the Jihaad Campbell juice, especially now that there doesn't seem to be a question about his availability anymore. Last week we talked about he's ahead of schedule. Well, this week it's looking more and more like he's going to be ready to go for preseason and ready to go for week 1. So that's great news to hear. And that's been one of the main stories when we talk about the Eagles camp. That's what everyone has their eye on. And the defense has really been kind of winning the day. Like I would say the past 4 practices, it's really been the defense kind of stifling the offense, causing issues, being all over the place. Coverage has been really good. And that's another huge talking point in this camp has been the improvement of Quinyon Mitchell has been very, very much talked about. People have said the most fun matchups to see are AJ Brown versus Quinyon Mitchell, because it's gotten to a point now where AJ, you can see it in AJ's demeanor when he's going up against him in one-on-ones, or when Quinyon's lined up against him. There's a level of respect there that AJ's like, oh, you're the only person here that can truly guard me and keep up with me and staying stride for stride. There's a couple pass breakups that Quinyon had. He picked off Jalen Hurts, and it was a really cool interception. Apparently, he had to really make a play on it. So Vic Fangio was saying like he wouldn't have made that play last year. So you're seeing the improvement, and it only gets me more juice because I was high on Quinyon last year and he obviously shined. And the fact that he, the hype around him now is that he could solidify himself as an all-pro, solidify himself as the top 5 corner if he just gets a few more interceptions this year. But it looks like he's going to be traveling more with the number 1 receiver, given the state of the kind of the quarterback room now that he's the number 1 guy. I think Vic Fangio is going to get a little bit creative with how they like to use Quinyon, and I think that's going to be really, really fun to see. So if he's, going up against AJ Brown and Devontae Smith every day and looking this good, I can, those are 2 of the best receivers he's going to see at any point in the season. So the fact that he gets to do that every day has been really, really good. So I'm really excited about year 2 for Quinyon. And
so
yeah,
I wanted to ask you, if you had to make a guess,
mm-hmm.
if you had to gander based on everything you're hearing, and I know Quinyon's your boy, like
Mm-hmm.
you talked about it last year, you were high on him from the get, like you were like, this guy's gonna be really good, and you clocked that early on. If you had to guess, do you think this is a breakout season for Quinyon?
I would say yes, in the sense of last year could have been a breakout season if he didn't drop 6 interceptions, right? He would have been, the conversation around Quinyon would have been different because everyone talked about it, acknowledged it during the season. They're like, no one's throwing his way, and when they're throwing his way, it's not working. And there was a stat, the Ringers Philly Special pulled this stat where they had the top 32 corners in the league, and they went off of the corners who were targeted in man coverage for over 200 snaps or more snaps, and the percentage of throws that were thrown their way. And Quinyon was the 16th, was ranked 16th on that list, meaning he's already receiving top 16 corner level attention and respect as a rookie. And for him to, if he is what they, think he is, Vic Fangio came out and said, they're like, whatever his ceiling is, he's going to hit it. It's whatever, it's up to Quinyon at this point. I think that this could be a really big year, especially if Quinyon travels, because last year was, he was on one side, Slay was on the other. And if it's just the games, I can already imagine the broadcast is going to be like, whoever, Malik Neighbors on Quinyon Mitchell, or whoever CD Lamb or George Pickens, whoever you want to throw on, and then just Quinyon Mitchell shadowing them the whole time and making it tough. So I'm excited for Quinyon. This is a big year. It's a tough schedule. You're going to have tough teams to play against. So you're going to get a lot of these really, really good dudes on the schedule. So if the attention and the spotlight's going to be on Quinyon this year. So I anticipate a breakout year for Quinyon.
Well, and it's a great opportunity. I agree. It's a really great opportunity for him. When you're asked to travel with receivers at any point in your career, it means that there's a level of respect that, your defensive coordinator or your scheme has for you as a player. Because at that point, they're saying you are our best coverage. You are going to travel with the best receiver on the other team. And you're going to be expected to make plays and to, strap him up every chance you get. And in this scenario, for him to get this call early on in his career, as early on as it is, that's just it's an enormous amount of respect that I'm sure Vic has for Quinyon already, to be able to ask him, to do this travel with the wide receivers. So I think absolutely, like, he's poised for this breakout year. I think this is going to be an exciting time to really watch what he's capable of, and it's also a good way for him to develop even further when you're constantly guarding and covering the toughest receivers that the other team has to throw at you. This is an enormous opportunity for him to grow as a player this year. So I'm excited to watch his development, especially since you clocked that all last year.
Yeah, definitely. Going into it, I didn't even think the Eagles were going to get him last year. For those who, remember, I was super high on Quinyon, but I thought he was going to go top 10, and it didn't end up working out that way. We ended up with him and Cooper, and it ended up being a thing too. And Cooper played really well too. AJ's been saying he's trying to make Cooper an all-pro. He's trying to call him all-pro Coop. And Cooper's, getting a lot of love. He was 60th on the NFL's top 100 list, and that pissed a lot of people off. So that was, an interesting spot for him. So, a lot of good things there. But despite Quinyon's success, the other talking point we talked about last week was that cornerback 2 battle between Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson. And it appears that that matchup is going to take a lot longer to decide than we think. But Vic Fangio had some interesting things to say about Adoree Jackson. And I don't know if it was joking or not, because Vic Fangio doesn't seem like he's always kind of been like the brutally honest, I will always tell the truth kind of guy. He said that they asked him, the reporters asked him, they're like, "Oh, did you watch film on Adoree before he got here?" And he's like, "I mean, I've watched some film on him, but I wasn't the one who brought him in here. Howie wanted to bring him in here, and whatever Howie says, I do." And that was kind of the thing. He was like, whoever Howie wants, I can't stop him. Like, he's going to get him. And I think that was part of the Bryce Huff issue that we dealt with last year. I don't think Bryce Huff was a Howie Roseman move, not a Vic Fangio move. And I think people confused that early on. And they're like, why isn't Vic Fangio making this work? And Vic Fangio's like, I don't like this guy. Like, he doesn't do what I need him to do. So that he said that about Adoree Jackson, which is interesting. He's like, he's got to come in here and show what kind of player he is or isn't. And there's a reason he's here. And there was a reason, he's had ups and downs in his career. So that makes me think that, he's going to play this out because he's still messing around on safety. Andrew Makuba got hurt. So they've been rotating the safeties, and Cooper DeJean is still seeing reps at safety too. So that, there's a little bit of uncertainty of what our base package is going to be. We're trying out other corners. Apparently Mac McWilliams, our rookie corner, has been playing really well. He had a nice stop today on our 6'6" Johnny Wilson, where he broke up a pass on him too. So there's potential for movement and chess pieces for some of these young guys. But Keeley, I believe, will wrap up the job, but I don't think Vic Fangio is going to make a decision on that until after preseason, until they're in-game reps and, see how the guys work against different guys on the field. But again, the comparison is, when Quinyon goes up against A.J. Brown, there's a level of respect there. But when A.J. Brown goes up against literally any other corner on this roster, he's cooking them. So it's one of those things. And Keeley's he's had a couple good reps on A.J., but it always seems to be like the great defense, but A.J. still finishes the job kind of guy. So that's kind of, we hope that Keeley can, take these lumps and continue to improve playing against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith every day. I think that's going to be the key for him, is just to get those reps, get used to it. And then those in-game reps in the preseason, I think he'll really have a chance to shine.
Yeah, when I watched that, I watched Fangio's presser where he made those comments about Adoree, and I was laughing, but at the same time, I was like, damn, like he actually just called him out like that. Because, I'll kind of just I'll actually, let me read a little bit of it, because this is the part to me that got me. So he starts off, by saying, I don't know if it's there we go. I don't know if I think it's the place. I think it's the time for him to show that. In Tennessee, when it came time to re-sign him and his contract was up, they didn't. The Giants, his contract was up, they didn't. It's time to show who he is or who he isn't. The first few days out here, he was like, he didn't know he was out there. The ball wasn't going his way at all. And then yesterday he had a couple balls thrown his way and he did very well. So that part to me, like where he's calling out like essentially why he wasn't re-signed in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, damn, like that's a shot. Bang, bang, right? And then he says, like, the start of your camp, you were terrible, basically. Like, and there's a level to me, this is where my mind started going. There's a level of this where it's like, yeah, it makes sense. The ball's not going his way. Hard to say you can make a play when things just aren't, going in your direction, right? But then there's you think about kind of the position he's in, and you got to think there's also ways to involve yourself when a ball isn't directly being thrown your way, or, situations aren't going away. There's ways to still involve yourself. And I think in a lot of ways that might have been something that Vic was kind of searching for. It's like, show me some character out there, Adoree. Like, are you really hungry for this or not? And this might have been kind of Vic's way of maybe trying to dig something out of Adoree just to see if he's got anything left to prove, past what he's already put on display. So it was interesting. I was, I listened to it and then I read the quote later and I was like, man, that was blunt, but there's a room, there's a time and a place for these kind of comments. And I think, honestly, if I had to pinpoint it, I think Vic kind of nailed the timing of it.
Yeah, I think, that's the Vic Fangio experience. I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed is the fact that everything he says, he truly means. And I do think that he doesn't mince words. So like, you're going to get, it might not be good for the Eagles what they like to do. Nick Sirianni likes to keep things close to the vest, but Vic Fangio's like, I'll just throw it out there. It doesn't even matter to me. So it's I like, hearing what he has to say. His press conferences are always really funny because he just lays it all out there. But I think that, Dory Jackson, he's been good in the locker room. He's been good with Keeley. They've been working together a lot. But I think that, listen, if Adoree comes out and wins the job, that just means he's performing well enough to, merit that position. So I will welcome a healthy competition. I want Keeley, I want the youth, and I want the size. But yeah, it was funny what Vic Fangio had to say about that. But he had glowing things to say about Keeley in OTAs, and I know that he expects a lot out of Keeley. So I think that, they're just going to try out a lot of guys in the preseason, and that's in different positions, different base, before they decide what they really want to do. Sidney Brown's been getting, he said he's been doing better and understanding the defense a little bit more. So we'll see, what kind of happens in that backfield outside of the guys who are kind of already locked in. But those have been the stories so far, on the defensive end. Outside of defensive tackle Mora Ujima has been making some noise. Apparently, he's been winning a lot of his reps against Tyler Steen, especially in the past reps that they've been liking to do. And we expect a lot out of Mora Ujima this year. He was kind of our fourth guy in the rotation last year, but he had, the advanced stats numbers love him, like his ability to get pressure in limited snaps. He kind of can come in and potentially fill that Milton Williams role alongside Jalen Carter, which would be huge if any one of these guys that we have behind them, looking good. So outside of that, people are really hyped about Jalix Hunt, and we'll see what happens when the pads are on. He'll look faster without the pads, but with the pads, we'll see if he continues to deliver with that consistency. And I was talking about last week the right guard spot with Tyler Steen. There might have been a question, but it doesn't look like there's a question. He's been running first team this whole time. He's been staying healthy. He made it further than he did last year, so I think that's a good thing for him too. So we're just locking down the backup spots on the O-line, and we have a backup center. Drew Kendall, the rookie, has been taking all the second team snaps, which was good because the guys that they had in place, Brett Toth, there was a lot of bad stuff going on with Brett Toth in terms of his ability to actually play center because he can't. So to have a person who can actually play center as a backup is huge, because last year in the championship game, we had Landon Dickerson play center sometimes. So that was definitely, a situation we want to try and avoid should Cam Jurgens goes down for any period of time this year. So I think, overall, the thing, that I've been enjoying is just kind of the process of, again, on the offensive side, it's going to be a work in progress still. And another takeaway, I don't know, and this will preface one of my takes for later. I don't know if we're going to see less Saquon touches this year. I don't know if the offense is going to change dramatically next year.
Why is that?
This time, Saquon is averaging more touches now in this training camp than he was. He's getting double the touches at this point in training camp that he did last training camp. They're featuring him, and I think they're trying to figure out ways to get Saquon involved still. Now, they're still going to, I think they're going to utilize whoever the backup running back is, whether it's Shipley or A.J. Dillon or Montrez Johnson, whoever they want to operate back there. But I don't know, man. I think Saquon's still got plenty of juice and he's looking pretty good. And I don't know if the Eagles are going to say, hey, we're going to limit his touches that much. And so I think that's something that has been noteworthy, and that's what they've been paying attention to as well. And Jalen Hurts has been communicating with a new offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo. Obviously, they've already worked together in the past. He was the QB coach, but Jalen and Kevin were just talking about, finding out how, the plays that they want to call together, how Jalen, what he's thinking, things like that. And I think there's definitely been a learning curve. I think that, Jalen has been kind of off the past couple of days, just a little bit off on his touch. Throws that he normally hits aren't hitting the same. It has been, they've been playing in really hot heat right now in Philadelphia, like over there at the NovaCare Center. It's 95 degrees outside. So the field, it feels like almost 110, and they were practicing. They had to practice an hour early because of the heat to try and get out of it as much as they could. But Nick Sirianni said it's good to play in the heat because, we have a date with Tampa in September and we got to get used to playing in that kind of ugly weather. So last year was very much the same thing. So it's okay to practice in the heat. He's like, we got to focus on some of the safety too, but this is the kind of environment we're going to be playing in too in September. So you got to be ready for that kind of stuff. So far, it's been business as usual. There's going to be some hiccups here and there, but it's good to know that the defense has kind of been winning the days. That makes me feel better in the sense of like, I know this offense is going to be just fine once week 1 rolls around and it's the starters and it's just business as usual. We're back, right? But the defense has been, that's the part with all the moving parts, and to have guys kind of standing out is important.
I'm not going to sit here and criticize a coaching staff or a team that just won the Super Bowl by any stretch of the imagination, okay? But what I'm going to point out is something that I found interesting, and that was what you just mentioned about Saquon getting, 2 times the amount of touches he did in last year's training camp. From a perspective of all last season, the story was Saquon Barkley, right? Saquon was the one who you could have made an argument at any point that he should have been an MVP favorite, right? From that perspective, you can almost assume that teams going into 2025, 2026 regular season are going to look to stop Saquon Barkley. Like the first thing that they're going to game plan for is stop the run game. And so from that perspective, I would think, and again, I'm not part of this coaching staff, I'm not getting paid the big bucks for a reason, right? But I would think that you would get into your bag a little bit deeper with your, with your passing schematic and find a little bit more of a rhythm through the air and maybe get a little more action through the air versus, pounding the rock and giving Saquon all these touches. And I get it. I mean, you want to kind of build a different schematic, or you want to keep building on the schematic that you're going with on the run game. But it's Saquon Barkley. Give him a gap, he's going to shoot it every time. You know what I'm saying? Like, figure something out through the air and really establish yourself there. Obviously, they did that in the Super Bowl. They did in the NFC Championship game. But, like, I want to see it in the regular season too. That was something I wanted to see more of last season. I'm curious to see how teams are going to attack you defensively from a defensive standpoint. And then I'm curious to see even deeper, is there a mixed bag? Is there a mixed playbook? Are there things that, the Eagles are working on this training camp and this preseason that they're going to incorporate into this year and make Jalen Hurts, prove all the doubters that say he can't throw the football wrong?
I think, last year it was weird because this time last year we were talking about, the offense has no motion. They ran the least amount of motion last year, and they ran the least amount of plays under center. And then in training camp, they were practicing those plays only next year to not really do it that much. And I think that the Eagles are always aware of their weaknesses, but at the same time, we got to keep in mind last year, Kellen Moore was the OC and he had experience in the NFL before calling plays. I do think we saw the Brian Johnson experience in 2023 with a guy who didn't know how to call plays, and kind of how we didn't really have answers. And I think this year we could potentially run into that same issue with Kevin Patullo, but I do think that Jalen Hurts is at a point now where him and Patullo are kind of working on those ways out, those way outs, those audibles, those hot routes, those things that Jalen can do in the moment, that if maybe Patullo doesn't have the answer, maybe Jalen does, in a way that he can bail them out of a situation, right? I'm interested to see what they want to do because Patullo is going to input his own ideas. He's mentioned that. He's like, there's things that we want to do that, add a little bit of flavor to the offense. But, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see anything that's that dramatically different. They're still running Jalen. They're still having plays where Jalen's running the ball. They're still, doing the things that they like to do. So I think that there's an element of this year. I think they're going to stick to the stuff that they know well and know that they can execute, because this team is built off of executing the ordinary better than anybody else. And that's what makes them special. So I do think that, I don't know if we're, going into the season, it almost felt like, oh yeah, the Eagles will come up with something new. But I'm not 100% sure that's going to be the case. I don't think they're going to roll out the same offense. I don't think that's possible. But I do think that, I don't think we're going to see this dramatic difference in the Eagles next year is what I'm trying to say. So it'll be interesting to see for sure.
Oh, it's totally fair. And I mean, the product they put out, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? It was clearly working all last season, and it worked all the way up until the biggest game where you totally destroyed the Chiefs and didn't give the refs a chance. So, I fully agree. I think this, like I said, I don't get paid the big bucks. It was just an interesting, kind of thought that kind of popped into my head. It's when you said that he was getting that many touches. I'm like, interesting. I would assume the other way around, bracing for, a different level of defensive attack, but
No, for
It's
sure. And
cool.
yeah, and who knows, maybe that's going to be the thing because I think they're aware that teams saw what they put up last year and there's going to be, counters to try and make that
For
happen.
sure.
And then at that point, it'll be up to Jalen to have to step up. This year, he will have to step up. I don't think, I don't expect 2,000 yards out of Saquon. I do expect a big year, but I don't expect 2,000 yards. That would be crazy. But I just think that it's going to be interesting to see just how different it looks. And that'll be something I don't even think we'll get a real chance to see it in preseason either. It's something we're going to find out week one, how they're going to come out. But so far, the vibes have been good. No major injuries to speak of. I know Smitty has been taking the past couple of days off with back soreness, but I don't think that's anything major. Jalen Carter missed the first few days. He had a shoulder thing, but he's back and he was still present through training camp and he was still, helping the guys and just kind of on the field, but not actually participating. But, he was back on the field these past couple of days in pads. Still looking good. So, no major injuries to speak of at the moment, thank goodness. And hopefully, it stays that way. And, we can continue to stay healthy going into the preseason and the regular season. But so far, week one has been good. I think week two, I'm just looking to see if there's any more battles of, if Jihaad Campbell continues to progress and look better, if maybe someone starts to separate themselves in the safety position when Drew Makuba comes back, how big will his role be when he comes back? That's kind of what I'm looking for this week. I mean, in terms of, other random spots I can think of, they talked about Jahan Dotson. And he had some good things to say. He had a presser. They asked him and Jalen Hurts have been working out. Apparently, they worked out weekly over the summer in Houston. Dotson was really going out of his way to reach out to Hurts to see, so they could work out together, try and develop that chemistry. And, if he's going to be the wide receiver 3 this year, I think, they're going to try and switch some things up. It might be getting him more involved and hopefully, he only saw 33 targets last year. That's not, that was the complete opposite of what we were anticipating his impact to be. I remember making that clip and I was talking about, we could have a third potential, 700, 800 yard guy. And, if he can live up to that as a true wide receiver 3 in this offense, especially if, one of AJ or Devontae goes down like they did last year, hopefully the built up chemistry that they had, and you started to see it in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl, he had that big catch too. So it's like, I think Jalen trusts him a little bit more. I think he's definitely solidified himself in the number 3 spot. Terrence Marshall was making a name for himself for a second there. Jalen really liked him. He was making some potential noise, but he got hurt. So that kind of stalls his progress a little bit. So did former 49ers Danny Gray. He was a former 49er wide receiver. He was at camp and he was making some big plays, but he got hurt and the Eagles waived him because of it. So he's no longer so he'll be out for a little bit. So that was kind of disappointing because apparently Danny Gray was making some big plays. But overall,
he'll do that. By the way, he'll do that. He'll make like 2 or 3 fire plays, and you're like, "Oh, bro, 53 man him right now."
Yeah,
and he'll just go MIA.
I love that. But so yeah, things are looking pretty good. Business as usual. The guys are just trying to maintain the fact that like this is a new year, and the focus is just going to be on the young guys. So I'm excited to see it.
That's fire, bro. I love that.
All right, so we're going to try something different today. We're doing a fun exercise where we looked at some over-unders for we went on DraftKings Sportsbook and decided to look up some over-unders for certain players this year, and it was either touchdowns or yards. And we came up with a few guys who we felt if we were to place a bet on them, we'd feel pretty confident that this bet would hit. I will give you a sneak peek. Mine are all over. I couldn't find an under, bro. It's hard to go under on people. I just believe in too many guys, So we're going to do that. And we also have 3 teams that we went on a win total. We went on the predicted win totals from Vegas. And we're going to also pick and see if we think they're going to go over or under. So let's start. I will take the first one. I have more guys here than you do. So I wanted to just kind of name off some bets here that I think are going to be exciting. I want your take on some of these guys too. So the first one I have, George Kittle, over under 900 receiving yards this year. And a lot of these bets are, they're in the minuses in the sense that like they're more likely to hit than they're not. But it was minus 100 for over 900 receiving yards. And you know what, with George Kittle and this Niners offense, George doesn't get featured the way he should, and yet he always finds ways to put up spectacular seasons because he's one of the most efficient players to ever do it at the tight end position and makes big play after big play. I think, given the uncertainty of the wide receiver room, in San Francisco. I think that, especially early on, maybe this changes later on in the year, but I do think George Kittle early on might be able to rack up some major, major yards. I'm going to go over on this bet. What do you think about that? George Kittle, 900 yards.
I would agree if Kyle Shanahan wasn't the head coach. And that's the only thing that like I'm considering as a possibility. But no, when you look around the wide receiver rooms of 49ers, we all know about it. We've talked about it here on this pod. Like there's going to be a level of reliance on George Kittle, one of the vets and one of the sure hands and playmakers on the team, that you got to be able to go to him. And if I'm Kyle, like I would, if I was Kyle, be looking at George Kittle and saying, "You're my guy this year. You are the rock. You are going to take the rock, and you're going to get the most targets." And we haven't seen a season from Kittle where he gets the most targets, where he's actually, a literal focal point in the game plan every single game, all 17 games. Like we just don't see that. And so that to me, like, if there's a season to bet the over, I think it's this season. I think you really did nail that on the head. And I'm hoping that, yeah, he goes over that 900. Let's say he goes 1,800, right? That'd be crazy. But no, anything like 1,000 plus, we texted about it. You said he can do a lot of these numbers in his sleep. He doesn't get a lot of targets and he still puts up massive numbers with that yards after catch. So this is a good season to do it. I like it a lot.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the next one. I stayed close to home, picked a Philly boy for this one. I dabbled with a few Philly guys in this one. I decided to switch up quite a bit, and I went with one. And I alluded to this point earlier, but it's Saquon Barkley, and he is set at 1,450 rushing yards this year. And last year, I was talking about his potential impact, coming along to the Eagles after we traded for him, or after he signed for us. And it was interesting that I was like, oh, he's capable of getting like 1,900 yards total, right? Like that would be a great season. And obviously he gets 2,000 yards rushing alone. And this year, if he were to break 1,450, he would be the first player ever to break. He would get the most yards for a player who got 2,000 yards the season before. And that's why I believe this bet is set at this number, because that would him breaking this number would mean him being that guy who sets that record, right? So I think Saquon can totally do that. I think 1,500 yards on the ground is a totally achievable thing for this offensive line that hasn't changed and this system that hasn't changed, and Saquon. Now, you got to keep in mind, he got to 1,500 yards, by week 15 last year. So I think it's one of those things that, and the Eagles sat him multiple games in the fourth quarter. I think that the Eagles are going to run into situations this year where they are up big, and, Saquon is going to get rest. So I think that's the thing with monitoring his touches, right? I think that if Saquon feels like he's good to go, just use him, dude. Like he's in his prime. He is smack dab in his prime. This is it. Like these are the best years we're going to get out of Saquon. Run him till he's ragged. That's what he wants to. And I think that, 1,450, I have to smash the over on that, dude. I just think that it just feels like he's going to hit it again this year.
Yeah, there's no reason to think, based on what we saw last year, that he would do anything under 1450. Like it would almost do him injustice, right? So to go into this season expecting him to go over that is, especially based on what you said about training camp and kind of the utilization that you can almost expect based on that. 14, that's easy. I think this is an easy over.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like I thought about it. I wondered, like, and again, these are all, when we make these bets, these are for the year, right? So we don't know if these guys are going to get hurt, things like that. That always happens, right? That gets in the way.
Of course.
So there is a possibility, but Saquon played every game last year. And, for those questioning his ability to stay on the field with the Eagles, he can, I think. And I think this offensive line protecting him, he's not getting hit the way he used to. So I think that, he'll have a chance at least to, even if he misses a game or two, he'll still have a chance to break this number. So that has me confident about it.
Bro, when he was in New York, there was no O-line. Like, he just ran into an entire wall of dump trucks every single time. And if he got anything past like 2 yards, it was a victory for them.
Yeah, incredibly efficient given the team that he was given at that time. So, all right, I wanted to go with this one. This one I switched on a couple times because I didn't even realize this number was there. It's way too low. And this is plus 100. So you can make a little bit more money on this one. Justin Fields.
Ooh.
14 and a half passing touchdowns. That's it. That's it. They don't think he's going to get 14 and a half passing touchdowns, so he needs 15 or more. I think first year officially getting the recognition as a starter on the Jets, the way he did in Pittsburgh. He has Garrett Wilson alongside him, so he does have a talented wide receiver. They've improved their O-line from last year. They still have Breece Hall. They still have good weapons around him, right? And you have a coach that believes in him, a coach that's saying, this is my guy. Let's let him go. His first true starting experience in Chicago. And I just think that he's capable of throwing 15 touchdown passes. And obviously, he's going to be utilizing his legs. But I just think that this feels like a really easy one for a player who I feel like people have kind of just forgotten about, given what his trajectory in his career has kind of been. So that's what I would go. I would go over on 14 and a half Justin Fields for his touchdowns.
I love your confidence, and I'm not going to say you're wrong because who knows? This Jets team is going to be a big question mark. And I mean, obviously they made improvements. They are a better team from what they were last year. But look, man, it's the Jets. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of like the Kings. You can't give them credit until they deserve that credit and have earned that credit. And anybody on that roster, you can kind of say the same for. So I'm hesitant on that. I think 14 and a half, like I would be questioning it. I do like Garrett Wilson as a target and especially in red zone, but I also still question Justin Fields as a player. Like, is he going to be capable to really take that offense into his hands when he really hasn't gotten a true, developmental season? Like one of his best seasons was last year when he really got, like 4 or 5 games with the Steelers. And then it was like, oh, okay, well, it's time for, Russell Wilson. So, I like your confidence in him. I like Justin Fields as a player, so I kind of am rooting for this, but I don't know if I would take it.
I just think the best year we really saw with him was when DJ Moore came into Chicago. That last year he was there, right? So he had DJ Moore. They popped off him and Cole Kmet. Like he had just a couple guys, and it made the world difference for him. I think that, and we thought the Jets were objectively bad last year, given everything that they went through with Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers still had 28 passing touchdowns, and it didn't feel that way. So it just feels like, I feel like Justin's going to get the opportunity to, let it rip a little bit more. This is kind of, this is his prove it contract. Like this is his chance to kind of revitalize his career a bit and say like, hey, this is kind of my last true chance to be the starter without question. If I mess up this opportunity, it's over. I think that chip on his shoulder is going to, give him a chance at least. So that'll be my faith in Justin Fields.
Love it.
And then I got 2 rookies I want to talk about, but I want to start with one who went 5th this year, and that's going to be Tet McMillan. I can't say his full first name. Wide receiver out of Arizona, who is now playing in Carolina with Bryce Huff. This is a layup. Minus 145. It was over under 4.5 receiving touchdowns, and I think that this year Bryce Young has a lot to prove. And he kind of got in rhythm last year, right? Like at the very, that second half of last year after the beginning where he got benched and then, ended up coming back, and he actually played really well to finish the year. And I think Tet McMillan is a special, special player. I have a lot of, faith in his ability as a player. And I think he's going to really be something special for Carolina. And he instantly enters as the number 1 guy. And you still have Thielen, you have Xavier Legette, and like that's a good little roster that they have on the offense right there. So I think Bryce Young's going to get a chance to build off of the confidence he had, and 5 touchdowns for a 6'5" guy who's going to operate in the red zone and just dominate with sure hands. I really believe in Tet McMillan going into this draft. I would have liked him for a lot of teams, and I think he's the best receiver in this draft class, and I expect big things from him. So 4.5 just felt light. I think he's easily getting like 7 or 8 this year.
I love that pick.
So let's talk about our last rookie. It was hard not to look at this line. So it's Ashton Jeanty, Las Vegas Raiders running back, only 1,050 rushing yards this year. And I think Pete Carroll, what was he so successful at when him and the Seahawks were, grinding away? They had Marshawn Lynch, right? They had that Legion of Boom defense. This year, it's going to have to be kind of a similar thing. They have a veteran quarterback, Geno Smith, adding there is going to help Jeanty a lot. If it was Aiden O'Connell, this would have been a completely different situation for a guy like Jeanty. But Geno Smith commands enough attention to where they have to respect that. So Jeanty's going to get the opportunity to make some big plays this year. So I think I'm going to hit the over on him hitting 1,050 yards. I think he can get 1,200, 1,300 yards this year. And that's, again, health permitting. And I think the Raiders are going to be more competitive than what their win total might project. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, I think. But yeah, I would have it Genty over 1,050 yards. What do you think?
So I'm happy you took the yards. I agree. I think Ashton's gonna have an awesome season for them. And this is a revitalized and renewed, Raiders team in a lot of ways. The energy is different. Like this is a good one to pick. I was going to argue you if you took like an Ashton Genty touchdowns. And the reason being is, we saw what Pete Carroll did in the Super Bowl when he had Marshawn Lynch on the 1 yard line. What does he do? He throws the freaking football. So I would be questioning at that point, like, are you still going to be throwing the football on the 1 yard line, big bro? I don't know. It makes me question, he's this older guy, a lot of this old man, mentality. I don't know. But no, I like it. Yards, as far as it's concerned, I think he's going to be a pretty heavily relied on player in terms of getting their offense going to, start games. And as far as keeping it going and staying in rhythm, he was incredible at Boise. Like he was a ton of fun to watch. And I think we're going to see a lot of the same what we saw from him in college in the NFL.
Exactly. Especially if we're just talking about his rushing ability. I think he has all the talent in the world, and I think he'll have a great chance to break that this year. So those are my guys that I would bet on this year. So let's flip over to you. What are some of the bets that you have on your side?
So I'm going to kick it off with, I'm going to go over to New England actually for my first two guys.
Okay.
And this New England team is pretty fun actually right now. I like what they're building. I can't believe I'm saying that because I hate the Patriots. But my first player that I was looking at, and it felt like a layup in a lot of ways, was Stephon Diggs. I think this is an easy over. He's set at 725.5 yards. And for me, I'm looking at Drake May, who's entering his second year, has a much better opportunity to break out. Stephon Diggs is going to be his wide receiver one and expected to see a lot of those targets this year, like a lot of targets. I think this new look Patriots is a great opportunity for Diggs to have an all-pro season and get back to what he was with the Bills. So this is a perfect opportunity for him to get back to that, to that level of play. It's a good way to kind of prove those doubters and those haters wrong that have really written him off since his departure from Buffalo. So I think this season, considering the line, 725 yards, that's not high for a guy like Stephon Diggs. And I think with Drake May, and a lot of this kind of depends on it, with Drake May going into his second year, obviously with Vrabel, who's going to be hopefully unlocking that offense for them, we could absolutely see a big season out of Diggs. And that to me is a lot of the reason why I took this, in my opinion, a layup.
Absolutely. No. And I think, people were worried about his injury when he first signed in New England, and he has ended up been practicing the whole time, and he looks like he's ready to go. And looks like he's revitalized this offseason, and he's had a pretty fun offseason himself. So I do think that Stephon Diggs is ready to go. I do think, with not just Rabel, but they brought back Josh McDaniels to run the offense. And I do think, McDaniels last time he was there was able to, if you're able to unlock Mac Jones, I think you're able to unlock a potentially better talent in Drake May here. And Stephon Diggs is the best receiver to walk into that room in a really, really, really long time for them. So I think that's something that's really, really good for Drake to have a veteran wide receiver like him to pair with, because the guys he was throwing to last year, there was just a lack of experience too. So I think that, Stephon's going to help Drake see the game a little bit differently too, and to have as reliable as target as Stephon, who wants those targets too. He wants, like you said, he has a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove the doubters wrong. So to be able to do that with a young Patriots team would be a really cool thing for him to do. 720, that's totally possible. I like it.
Exactly. So you were talking about Drake May. I was talking about Drake May. That is also who my next guy is, and that's Drake May over on his regular season touchdowns, which are set at 19.5. Now, initially you're looking at that and you're like, hey, 19.5, that seems like a pretty big number. But like I said, man, he's entering year two with a bolstered team. this is the strength of schedule for the Patriots is the third easiest in the NFL. And that's a lot of the reason why I'm looking at this Patriots team and I'm saying, this is an opportunity for them to go out and kind of make some noise this season. Mike Vrabel's offense is obviously, he's not necessarily the offensive coordinator, but offenses with teams that have had Mike Vrabel as coach, like with the Titans, they were very good in the red zone. And they were essentially for his entire tenure there. One of his worst seasons there, he was still fifth in the NFL at punching the ball in the end zone. And that's where I expect the biggest jump in Drake's game this year. So 20 touchdowns sounds very realistic to me for Drake May and a team that is expecting to, make some leaps and bounds this season.
Absolutely. I mean, 19 and a half, that was the same as same amount of totals as Super Bowl MVP Jalen Hurts. So he's in pretty good company there. If that's what you're wanting to do there. I'm glad you said that was a lot. That's that makes me feel a little bit better. But I think that Drake is going to be in a spot. I think the Patriots have come, and we can talk about them more in a little bit, but they've come such a long way. And I think that Drake is poised to take that second year jump because I think that, he entered midway through, last season. He didn't get the full season of work. So he really did get to deal with the bumps, and he showed flashes. So I think that with Stephon Diggs and with that offensive system, I think it'll be much easier. And they don't really have a true running game either. So I do think that, they're going to be relying on Drake May to punch the ball in and to actually finish drives. So that'll definitely give him the opportunity to hit the over on that for sure.
Exactly. So moving on to my last guy. This was a MVP candidate in 2023. He was a guy who carried his team throughout the season, was just a pinnacle on the ground in terms of what you want to see from your running back. And this is a guy who's now a fresh dad. Gee, that sounds kind of familiar, Marcos.
What to say?
I wonder if I'm talking about Christian McCaffrey, baby. So his over under on rushing yards is set at 950. Like I said, I'm doubling down, bro, on that dad powers take. He's looked incredible in training camp. He's looking like the old Christian McCaffrey. With the wide receiver room being as subpar as it is and questionable as it is right now, it's easy to assume that Kyle will lean on his running back before he were to lean on, like a tight end, for instance. But if his body holds up, bro, I think this is an easy over because Christian McCaffrey, 950 yards, like he can put that up in his sleep. Absolutely. It really does just boil down to his availability. And everything that I've seen, obviously last year, dude, he essentially had the entire season off. He came back for, a game or two or however many. Basically, he sat out the whole year while he was rehabbing that whole Achilles tendonitis thing. And that was disastrous. And it's not something you ever want to have to deal with. But his dad said it. He said it. His training staff has said it. Like, he's 110%. He's ready to go. He's in great shape. This is a season, in my opinion, like, if you're going to run him into the ground one last time, this is probably the season to do it. So I'm taking the easy over on 950 yards on CMC, baby.
Yeah, 950 seems really, really light. I think that's
right?
a fear. That's a fear of injury. I think they're already kind of pre-basing that in there because, this man was on the field last, he was out there dominating, and it's good. I think, yeah, he's a year older, but that rest definitely will help in that he got time to recover. He gets to get back into game shape. Yeah, that's really low for Christian McCaffrey. That's too easy not to take.
From a former 2023 offensive player of the year. Like, that's so
crazy.
Wild to me. It's disrespectful.
The difference 1 year can make, right? And then in the worst ways, this is the worst of the recency bias, the reverse of it. So it's interesting. You get forgotten just as quick if you're not in the stars in the spotlight. So definitely like that pick for CMC.
Love it.
All right, so now those are all of our player over-unders that we had, mainly over, if all over. So now we're going to talk about win totals. So we each pick 3 teams. We might have one or two that match up here. It depends on how we were feeling. We kind of didn't know we were going to pick going into this. But I want to talk about let me ask you. I think I want you to start here. Do you have any unders?
I have one under, bro.
Okay, let's see it. Who is your under, and then I'll give you mine.
And it's funny because my under is actually probably my farthest fetch. It's probably the farthest reach on my entire board here.
Okay.
Um, so this team is set at 9.5 games over under.
Okay.
And that team is the Rams. Now, before people
Oh,
freak out, all right. Right now, Matt Stafford is not in training camp. He's not healthy. He's got some issue, and I don't know what it is
it
off the
was
top of
a
my head.
back injury.
Thank you. And every single season since 2021, he's had something going on. So obviously, he's probably one of the most durable quarterbacks from a standpoint of playing through injuries that there is in the NFL left right now. But I don't think Stafford can stay healthy all season long. And I know my whole take on CMC, but like I'm looking at Stafford right now and I'm seeing just essentially his body kind of deteriorate over time. And especially since 2021, 22, 23, 24, all these different injuries piling up, and now with his back injury. And I'm looking at their depth chart behind him, it's probably going to be Jimmy G, who is, backing him up in a lot of ways. And
We love that.
yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in Jimmy G. I don't think he's going to be able to grab them more wins over the expectation. So, strength of schedule is middle of the pack for them, but the tough games are spread out. So it really does depend on his health. I think the Rams right now are being extremely overhyped, but that's coming from a Niners fan and somebody who doesn't really like the Rams that much. So again, this is probably my farthest fetched take that I can throw out here right now, but I'm gonna take the under on 9.5 wins for the Rams.
And even if it's far fetched, just because you go under 9.5, that means the best that they can do in the scenario 9-8. That's a possibility if injuries happen, right? Especially if a Matt
Right.
Stafford injury happens. So it's
Exactly.
not that out of the realm of possibility. You're not saying they're going to be a 6-win team, even though you probably think that in your mind. But that doesn't, I think that.
4.
I think that the Rams, they're one of these trendy teams that are going to get a lot of hype. One of the teams that everyone's argument is like they were one play away from beating the Eagles, so they probably would have went to the Super Bowl, blah 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 blah, all that, right?
It was
So
more than just one play.
I
People are
like
freaking out, dude.
I know it. So it's like that's the easy argument to say for the Rams, and I do think that there's still good things about them. Devontae Adams for Cooper Kupp. We'll see how that works out for them. All that stuff. I think that we're gonna definitely break down each team. When we do our division, our predictions going into the year. But 9.5. That's a good spot for the Rams, and that's what's going to make it tough because they could be one of these top teams, but they do go through ebbs and flows every year. They do go through these stretches where like they play really poor and then Matt Stafford pops off and then they play really well. And that's kind of like the curse of the Bengals too. So, if they can avoid a rocky start, then they'll go over. But if they had that rocky start, and especially in your division that's improving again, there's a chance that they could stumble. But the weird part is in the NFC, a 9-8 record could somehow sneak you into the playoffs still. So it's, that's just one of those things. So that's a good under. I like that. Okay, so let me present you with my under. And I think this team, I went a little bit, I don't know if this is as bold, but this was a team that was extremely hyped up last year. Had a wonderful record last year, but they were decimated by injuries. And this year they've had a lot of turnover. And they are set at 10.5 wins, and that would be the Detroit Lions. I want to go under on the Detroit Lions. And listen, same thing. And under here just means like I could see them going 10-7. And
Yeah.
10-7, you're still a playoff team. Most likely you're right in the hunt. That division, the NFC North, is getting a lot tougher. Now, how we feel about the quarterbacks within that division, Jared Goff included, is important. But Ben Johnson leaving for the Bears, I think that matters. Aaron Glenn leaving to the Jets, I think that matters. You're replacing both coordinators. But hey, hypocritical for me to say that when the Eagles won a title with 2 new coordinators last year, right? So it is not impossible, but there's a learning curve to that. And not to mention Frank Ragnow, your all-pro top 3 center in the league, suddenly retires midway through the offseason, surprising everybody. And your offensive line takes a little bit of a hit, and that was one of your strong points last year. They're still going to be decent. They still have Penei Sewell. They still have a couple guys, right? But to lose that strength in the interior when you're trying to utilize the run game with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery is going to be interesting. And listen, you're getting guys coming back. Aiden Hutchinson is back from injury. That's great. Their whole defense that was hurt is back, right? But they were all hurt last year. What is the chance that some of these guys go down again and then they don't have the same level of depth this year that they did last year? And It just makes me a little bit worried. It makes me a little bit worried when I think about Detroit and what they've had to go through the past couple of years and the disappointment they suffered. They've been to the NFC title game. They've gotten close. They've been to the doorstep of the NFC title game twice, and then they've just kind of fizzled out. And you wonder how long this roster can continue that stretch. So I think this year might be a hiccup year, but they can still be in the hunt. But I would not be surprised if this is an under year for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, and I mean, this would be the year for it. And like you said, the under years, it can be 10 games, right? Like it can be that close kind of thing. And 10 games, like you said, is still, it's still very respectable. But yeah, I mean, their division's getting tougher. With the kind of departures that they've had, it's easy to kind of look around the room and say, this isn't the same Lions team that, we saw really the last year and 2 years really. But really last year was, in a lot of ways, their best shot at a Super Bowl, and we'll see what kind of additions and kind of direction that they go here in the coming years. But they're not, in my opinion, they're not a better team than they were last year, and there are a lot of better teams in their division. There are better teams in the NFC, so it's it's going to be tough to kind of gauge how the season's going to go for them, but 10 wins right now sounds and feels right for them, and that would be considered the under.
And on top of that, they have a first place schedule too. So they're going to be facing tough teams this year, Eagles included, Chiefs included. Like they're going to be facing all the top dogs too. So you're getting everybody's best shot because everyone in Detroit, the expectations have been risen. So it'll be interesting to see. I still believe in this team. I think the Detroit can totally go over, but for some reason, I just have this feeling that they could be one of these top teams that go under this year. And then,
yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about a potential over. Who would you have as your second team?
My second team is my team, and that is the Niners, who are set at 10.5. And,
That's
10.5 wins. It is pretty high. And again, I can see a 10-win season and that would make sense. I can see an 11-win season. That would make sense. It's barring injuries, of course. And knowing the Niners, they don't have good history with that. But the strength of schedule alone is a big reason to believe that this team can achieve the over. Vibes are up. Youngsters are popping off in training camp. If the Niners can find ways to grab wins in the first 5 weeks against their division, this is going to be key to this. They will be very well positioned to grab 11 plus wins. But those first 5 weeks, when you don't have Brandon Ayuk, when you are going to be battling some of these early on injuries, those first 5 weeks are going to be key, absolutely key. When you see all 3 of your division rivals in those first 5 weeks, you've got to win at least 2 of those games against those division rivals. And if you don't get at least 2 of those, this number is going to be tough to see happen. But, considering the injuries and considering lack of depth at certain positions, it's easy to see this team being marked at 10.5 and saying, oh, absolutely under. But call me a homer, call me a faithful, because I'm faithful to the Bay, I'm faithful to the 49ers, and I'm absolutely taking the 10.5 over on this.
I think when you gotta value the Niners having the clearly easiest schedule going into this year, like if the hardest games they really play are in their own division, like that sets you up for success down the line. I think even with talent deficiencies due to injuries in certain areas, who knows what's going to happen when you get guys back, but you guys will be competitive. Your defense will be better under Robert Saleh. You'll have a more consistent team. I just think that, maybe if you get to a bumpy start, even if you start off 2-2, 2-3, that last 5 or 6 games you guys play, there's a bunch of cupcakes that you're going to be able to be able to realign and readjust yourself and make a playoff push. I think 10 wins is 10.5, so 11 wins is extremely achievable for the matchups that you guys have. And the fact that you guys didn't get completely screwed over on rest disadvantage this year either. So I think that's one of the things that the Niners had to overcome over the past couple of years. So that also attributes to the injuries. So I think that, there's the things that, can hopefully line up in their way this year. That 11 wins is totally doable. So I love the over on the Niners. I would have taken it too.
Love it.
So my second team, we've talked about them a little bit when we talked about some of the individual players. It's the Patriots, dude. Patriots are slated at 8.5 wins, which, it's weird to think the post-Brady Belichick era has just been a dumpster fire for the New England Patriots. It just hasn't gone the way that they had anticipated. But now with Mike Vrabel and Drake May and all these guys, it seems like they're trending upwards. They invested most money in the NFL in the offseason. They revamped their defense, with Super Bowl champion Milton Williams. They paid $100 million to. They brought in a lot of guys around the core. I did see Christian Gonzalez did get hurt today, but he avoided major injuries. But that problem with that is he has been turning into an injury-prone player now. And Christian Gonzalez is a really good corner. He's one of the best corners in the league when he is playing. But he needs to stay healthy. So hopefully, he gets back soon and he can stay healthy. But they're slated at 8.5. I can see this team as a 9-8 team. I think that would be a good progression for this team under Drake May in year 2. And with Stephon Diggs, I think this offense is going to have its ups and downs, but I think this defense with Mike Vrabel, who's a defensive-minded coach, that's his thing. And he has the players on this roster now to really make some noise and instill his style, his no BS style into this team. And I think they're responding really well. So I have faith that the Mike Vrabel, led Patriots in this division in particular. Yes, the Bills are the head honcho of the division by far, but the Jets took a step back. They're a question mark. The Dolphins are a huge question mark with all the injuries and all the drama around that team. I think the Patriots, with all the good vibes, I think they're going to be a feel-good story this year, and I think they're going to be a team to look out for. So I would take the over on 8.5 for New England.
Yeah, I fully agree, and you nailed everything on the head.
Heck yeah. All right, so who do you got for your last team?
Last team is an over, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders.
Perfect. I had them too. All right, let's run it. Heck yeah. Let's go.
So they're set at 6.5 wins. And honestly, crazy. I get it. The Raiders have kind of been a laughing stock for a number of years now, and it's hard to take that team serious, but they really reset a lot of, what was going wrong, and they're resetting the vibes. Vibes are up. They drafted extremely well. Pete Carroll has high expectations, old man crazies or not. I think with a middle of the pack strength of schedule, it's safe to say that you can plot them at 7 games. I think 7 games, whether you think that's good or not, 7 games is something that is very achievable for this Raiders team. And that to me is a large reason why I'm looking at the 6.5. And I'm like, really, with what they've got going in Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, Geno Smith, and Pete Carroll's mentality, just what he brings to a football game from a planning standpoint, I don't think 6.5 is doing them respect right now.
Agreed. I just think that Pete Carroll. This is before all this Pete Carroll movement happened and the trade for Geno and Genty brought into the building. This win total was set to 6.5 even after the fact. So they really don't think that they're going to make any noise in their division that features the Chiefs and the Broncos and the Chargers. So yeah, all 3 of those teams were in the playoffs last year, so they are the worst in that division, just as it stands. But they have talent on this roster, and I think that it's just you have one of the best tight ends in the league. You got a bright young running back, and you have a reliable quarterback, which is just something they haven't had, even when Derek Carr had some good years for him. But there's a level of reliability that they've been missing, and I think Geno has been up and down in his time in Seattle, but he is an improvement over what they've had here the past couple of years. And I think that, competent coaching, competent quarterback play is going to be enough. And not to mention, they have good weapons on the defensive side of the ball, too. Obviously got the freak over there, Max Crosby. They released Christian Wilkins. There was some news, if you guys didn't pay attention, about him, being a little freaky in the locker room. So they definitely, they lost a guy, but he's been hurt. So it's not like he was actually making an impact for them. But the Raiders, I think they look good, and the vibes are great. I think, listen, as corny as Pete Carroll might be, he is 74 years young. He is with these guys. He runs with these guys. He practices what he preaches, and he has that energy about him that can uplift an entire team.
Exactly.
And I think there was a freshness about his energy that he needed to. He needed a new change of scenery to get out of Seattle. I think it just, that relationship was a little bit tumultuous at the end. So I think this is a revitalized Pete Carroll. He's been successful. His entire career, he's been successful. And I don't see 7 wins is light. I just don't see that being an issue for the Raiders.
Yeah, it's pretty disrespectful. And the fact that you had it set at 6.5, and then you bring in Pete, you bring in Geno, and it's still a 6.5. It just shows it's not just recency bias. It's bias based on kind of what this team has been for a number of years now. And the year that they really could have made some noise with Derek Carr when he went out in one of the bigger games right before they were on, going on a run. Since then, bro, like, and even a little bit prior to that, they just couldn't really find anything to, really build upon, right? And right now you feel like there's something to build upon in Las Vegas. So that's a lot of the reason why I'm looking at this, and I'm like, they've got so much to prove. They've got so much going for them. They're not paying attention to what other people are saying. They're out there just playing ball and doing exactly what they need to do.
Exactly. So, they're going to be one of those teams to look out for. They might surprise some people, or they might be just fine. They might be a middle of the pack team this year, but I think 7 wins is attainable for this team. So definitely a good over to have if you guys were thinking about the Raiders this year. So those are all the picks that we had. Those are all the bets that we had. And that, and those are all the news from training camp. But did you have any final thoughts before we head out here?
No final thoughts, brother. I'm good.
Heck yeah. So for all you Kings fans out there who stick with us throughout this NFL Pack show, there's been some talks regarding Jonathan Kuminga, but there's a standoff between him and the Warriors. Nothing concrete yet. There's just been talks of offers that he's denying, and that the Kings have made offers, the Suns have made offers, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, we'll talk about that when we hear more. But outside of that, guys, I think this has been an action-packed episode. We appreciate you guys so much for all your love and support. If you guys want, this was the end of episode 98. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on any of our social medias. The links to the description are up above for all you watching on video. For all you audio listeners out there, the links to the descriptions are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, follow the show. We appreciate all the love and support. Guys, we're almost at 100. We're almost at 150 subscribers too. Like, we're growing with you guys each and every week. We appreciate all you guys who stick through and really love what we have to say. We appreciate, or even don't. We've gotten some fun comments from you guys too, and we really love it. I love the engagement and the belief that you have in our teams or our delusions. So I think it's been a crazy ride, and coming up on episode 100, it's been a wild ride with a lot of fun stuff to talk about over the years. And this year, it's only going to be more crazy. So we're really excited for it. So with that being said, guys, I am Marcos Conan Negron. Beside me here, as always, is
Ben the Jet Rats.
All right, y'all. We love you. We are going to take a break next week, so I should warn you guys about that too. We will. Ben's got some family coming in next week. Shout out Mama and Papa Reds for coming on down, visiting California. So they'll be here for the week. It gives us time to just take a little bit of break, especially preseason stuff, all that. So we will check in 2 weeks with you guys to catch up on all the news that happens in this week.
Yeah, I mean, you guys got to cut me some slack right now. If anybody's wanting this episode next week, you got to understand, I haven't seen my parents in 9 freaking months, all right? I'm going to take the week off. I'm going to enjoy it with them, and I'm going to have an album release party aside from that. Woo! So, appreciate y'all. We love y'all. But again, we'll be back the following week. And again, we've got something really fun coming up really soon.
Yes, sir. All right, y'all. So like Ben said, we will be with you guys in just a couple weeks. All right, so we we'll talk to you later. Peace.
Peace.